This topic is thalassemia. Good morning, class. It's because I have prepared too many slides so that we can have an elaborate cover of this topic, and it's an important topic. I hope all of you are going to quickly join the class. So without losing any more time, we'll start with the class. Thalassemia is a very important topic. One of the commonest cause for the hemolytic anemia, and it's basically a hemoglobin disorder in which the production of normal hemoglobin is partly or completely suppressed because of the defective synthesis of one or more globulin chains. And what is important to remember is thalassemia is inherited as an autosomal recessive disorder. Normal hemoglobin is hemoglobin synthesis starts right from the prenatal period of 3rd to 10th intrauterine life, and the normal hemoglobin is an embryonic hemoglobin, which is basically a chains of these Gower and alpha chains. Basically, it's called Gower globin, and this is the alpha globin. So as the fetus develops, the fetal hemoglobin, which composes of 2 alpha globin chains and 2 gamma globin chains, it starts producing fetal hemoglobin by 38 weeks of gestation, and so first 6 months postnatally, that's the infant first 6 months of the infant life, there is a preponderance of fetal hemoglobin, and as it rises and it decreases to about constituting around up to 2% of the total hemoglobin in adults. So it starts increasing soon after the birth and tends to decrease up to 6 months of infant's life, and thereafter it stays at around 1 to 2% of the total hemoglobin. The adult hemoglobin is the main hemoglobin, and you have alpha 2 and beta 2, the 2 globulin chains. They are arranged in a tetramer as a quaternary structure, and it constitutes 98% of the adult hemoglobin. Usually after the first 6 months of infant's life, it starts constituting the predominant hemoglobin, and the 2% are in form of HbA2, which is alpha 2 delta 2 chains. So this is the quaternary structure of hemoglobin of 4 peptide subunits with 2 alpha and 2 beta, and each globulin it contains one heme group, which is a central ferrous iron, which is complex to ferret porphyrin, and it forms a central heme group or a heme prosthetic group. This one is basically the hydrophobic end of the globins, which is inside and around central of the quaternary structure. And these hemoglobin, it constitutes of 96% globin and 4% heme. Heme portion is, as I said, it's basically produced in the mitochondria of the young RBCs, and globulin portion is basically produced synthesized by the ribosomes of the RBCs. And these various types of globin, they combine to form different hemoglobin, and they are arranged in usually the 8 functional globin chains are arranged into clusters, beta cluster and alpha cluster. Beta clusters are basically the genes for the beta cluster are present on the short arm of chromosome 11, and the genes for the alpha cluster is present on the short arm of chromosome 16. So the protoporphyrin ring, which is an iron atom, constitutes the center of the hemoglobin chain, and the main site for the production of protoporphyrin is the mitochondria. But as the cell matures, it doesn't contain a nucleus or a mitochondria. So three major types of hemoglobin: adult hemoglobin, 2 alpha and 2 beta chains, and constitute about 97% of the adult hemoglobin. And as I said, the postnatal life, the HbA replaces HbA by 6 months, and fetal hemoglobin constitutes 2 alpha and 2 gamma. It has a higher predisposition to oxygen, higher affinity to oxygen, and it constitutes 1% of the adult hemoglobin. And at terms, it is considered the major hemoglobin up to the range of 70 to 90%. It falls by the end of first month, and by the end of 9 months, by the end of the 6 months, it comes to the level of 1 to 2%. And HbA2 constitute 2 alpha and 2 delta chains, and it constitutes around 1.5 to 3% of the hemoglobin. And this is the graph showing the alpha chains and how the beta chains, the beta globin chains, increases postnatally, and how the gamma, which forms a part of the fetal hemoglobin, how it decreases postnatally. So as we talked about, the beta chains are encoded by a single gene on the chromosome 11, while the alpha globin chains are encoded by two closely linked genes, and they have two closely linked genes on chromosome 16. So in a normal person, the two copies of each chromosome, that is 2 loci, encode the beta genes, while the 4 loci encode the alpha gene. Recent data indicates up to 7% of the world population is carrier of hemoglobin disorder, and around 1 lakh children are born every year world over with homozygous state for thalassemia, which is the thalassemia trait. In India, the prevalence of genes varies from 1 to 17%, up to 3.3%, and it's common in special communities like Sindhis, Punjabis, Khatris, and all the other communities as I have mentioned here. And this is basically the prevalence of thalassemia, alpha and beta both types. These are the countries. You can see the Asian and the eastern side, the southern eastern Asia, and the west, or this Arabic countries, or a Mediterranean region. This thalassemia would also have originated from around this areas, the Mediterranean region, which is also more prevalent for thalassemia. So inheritance is autosomal recessive. So if a mother is a trait and a father is a trait, and if there is a point mutation on the chromosome 11, or the alpha thalassemia is due to the gene deletion on chromosome 16. So if there is a trait in a mother and father, the chances of thalassemia majors are 25%, traits 50%, and unaffected 25%. It's a very important inheritance graph to remember, because as we'll talk about the preventive aspect of thalassemia, this is one important thing which forms a very important aspect of counseling in individuals with or couples with thalassemia trait. And classification wise, thalassemia has been classified into so many classifications are there. Classification wise, you have alpha thalassemia, beta thalassemia, gamma, delta. Then you have hereditary persistence of fetal hemoglobin, hemoglobin lepra, sickle cell thalassemia, HBC thalassemia, Punjab thalassemia, HB thalassemia. But the focus of our lecture is alpha and beta thalassemia. And the alpha thalassemia has been classified amongst a silent carrier or a trait, which is a minor, where you have deletion of only one loci of the one gene, while when the two genes are mutated or deleted, you have a minor, which is a trait. Then hemoglobin H, where you have a 3 alpha genes are mutated or deleted, and the major is when all the alpha genes responsible for all alpha genes, all the 4 genes are mutated. And beta is been classified in a trait, intermediate and major, and the trait is basically where you have some suppression of beta chain production because of the point mutation, but still there are certain beta cell production is still there in quite a major amount, where the intermediates you have enhanced suppression of beta chains because of the point mutation, while major when you have no production of beta chains, which is also called Cooley anemia. So beta thalassemia is basically a deficiency or absent beta subunits. It's commonly found in Mediterranean, Middle East, Asia and Africa, and 3 types: minor, intermediate and Cooley anemia. And the genes encoding is on chromosome 16, contains 2 copies of beta globulin gene. So the suppression of gene is more likely than deletion when you have beta 0. This is being presented by the acronym beta 0, which refers to the complete absence of production of beta globin on the affected allele. Beta plus refers to the alleles with some residual production of beta globin, while beta plus plus is the reduction in beta globin production is very mild. So this is how it is basically genotypically presented. Beta minor or trait is either will be a normal beta chain or some suppression of beta chain, or a normal beta chain, or a complete absence of beta chain. So the other intermediate will be B plus B plus, B plus B0, and beta thalassemia major will be B0 B0, or rather beta 0 beta 0. So this is how the deficiency of as beta chain synthesis occur, and that leads to increased production of gamma and delta chains. Pathophysiology, it's a very important diagram to show you what happens when there is a insufficiency of beta chains. Will be excess of alpha chains, and it will form a tetramer, and because of the excess of alpha chain forming tetragons, it forms an aggregates and it precipitates in the RBCs, forming an inclusion body, and that will lead to premature destruction of these mature erythroblasts within the marrow, and that will lead to ineffective erythropoiesis. Very important, this is ineffective erythropoiesis or extravascular hemolysis. Actually these defective RBCs will be destroyed in the spleen, and eventually it will lead to anemia. And there will be again increased production of HbF and HbA2, and that will further worsen the hypoxia, because HbF is the fetal hemoglobin have high affinity for oxygen, and it doesn't let hemoglobin or oxygen to be released to the tissues. So this is how as the hemoglobin is broken down, it forms globulin and heme, and then it can be excreted as unconjugated bilirubin, or the iron will developing it will form a developing erythroblast in the marrow. So what will next happen as the anemia ensues? There will be because of the inadequate HbA, and tissue hypoxia will lead to erythropoiesis or increased erythropoietin hormone production in the kidneys, and that will lead to erythropoiesis in the marrow, and that will lead to the expansion of the medullary cavity of the various bones. Very important to know this. This leads to the ineffective erythropoiesis, and still because the medulla or the marrow, the bone marrow is working, is getting exhausted and is working frustratingly to compensate for the decrease in adequate HbA, and that will further lead to the expansion of the medullary cavity of the bones. And as the bone marrow is not able to meet the actual required amount of hemoglobin A because of this defective beta globin synthesis, the liver and spleen will work as an organ for extra hemolytic extramedullary hematopoiesis will take place in both spleen and liver. The spleen will have a dual function. It will lead to extravascular hemolysis or breaking down of the defective RBCs, as well as ineffective erythropoiesis in the form of extramedullary erythropoiesis as the marrow gets expanded and frustrated. So that's where the spleen enlargement will be greater than the liver enlargement. So this is what happens: there is a beta chains reduced, and there is excess unpaired alpha chains, and it precipitates insoluble inclusions, which will lead to RBC membrane damage, perturb the internal ionic environment, and reduce deformability of the RBCs, and it interfere with the RBCs divisions also. And so it will lead to eventually ineffective erythropoiesis, and this is the main reason for the bone changes and skull changes with the malar prominence and chipmunk facies, and then hepatosplenomegaly and the persistent progressive anemia. So the effects of marrow expansion will be deformities of the skull and the face, folate deficiency, and because of the hypermetabolic state there will be fever and wasting and increased absorption of iron from the intestine. And hepatomegaly will be due to the extramedullary erythropoiesis, and there will be hemosiderosis because of iron release from the breakdown of the endogenous RBCs that will be won't be reabsorbed from the proximal tubules in the kidney, and it will be assimilated in the proximal tubule and will be sloughed off subsequently and formed and this is basically called hemosiderosis, which is iron containing tubular epithelium. And then you will have hemochromatosis because of the excess iron deposition in the various organs and tissues, and it can lead to infection or transfusion related infection later on, leading to hepatomegaly, or due to these certain viral infections which is wholly transfusion related, and that can again lead to hepatomegaly. And then you can have chronic active hepatitis. Splenomegaly, as I said, the cause for splenomegaly will be extramedullary hematopoiesis and work hypertrophy due to constant hemolysis. And then there is a condition called hypersplenism, where is a progressive splenomegaly and progressive defect in the RBC and the other blood products. Jaundice, because there will be unconjugated hyperbilirubinemia, and the direct jaundice will be there, and the hepatitis will be again transfusion related or hemochromatosis related, and there will be production of GV stone, and will lead to it. There can be a manifestation of obstructive jaundice because of the gallbladder stones, and that can also lead to cholangitis. Infections, because of increased iron in the body, and that leads to blockage of the monocyte and macrophage system. And the hypersplenism invariably leads to leukopenia, and these they have the, and so the infections associated with transfusion are also very common. So these are basically the reason behind one patient with the thalassemia having a fertile ground for infection, especially the Yersinia enterocolitis infection is very common in such patients. Then accumulation of iron through the multiple blood transfusion, and that will lead to accumulation of iron or deposition of iron in the pituitary endocrine system, system, and leading to disturbances like short stature, delayed puberty, poor secondary sexual characteristics, and then hemochromatosis will leading to cirrhosis of liver, which is again dreaded complication. And cardiomyopathy is one most common cause of death is the cardiac failure that can be due to anemia as well as increased accumulation of iron in the form of cardiomyopathy, which is also called cardiac hemosiderosis, which leading to cardiac failure, arrhythmia, heart block, and sterile pericarditis. Then deposition in the pancreas can lead to diabetes mellitus. Then adrenal insufficiency, hypothyroidism, hyperparathyroidism, restrictive lung disease, and increased susceptibility to infection, that is the Yersinia infection. So the clinical features, one importantly, that patient with thalassemia major, the age of presentation will usually be 6 to 9 months, because these individuals are protected through fetal hemoglobin till the 6 months of age, and the patient or the infant will immediately manifest as because of thalassemia major. There will be progressive pallor and jaundice and cardiac failure as early as 1 year of the infant's life. The infant can present as a cardiac failure or failure to thrive, gross motor delay, feeding problems, bouts of fever and diarrhea, and hepatosplenomegaly. But as the patient progress into childhood, there will be a growth retardation or severe anemia related cardiac myopathy or cardiac dilatation, and transfusion dependent, and patient will become more transfusion dependent, and there can be a further icterus or changes in the skeletal system. And the changes in the skeletal system will be something called chipmunk facies, which is a hemolytic facies, where there is a frontal bossing, maxillary hypertrophy, depression of the nasal bridge, and malocclusion of the teeth. Paravertebral masses will be there with a broad expansion of the ribs at the vertebral level, and it can lead to paraparesis too, and there will be chances of pathological fractures because of the cortical thickening and increased porosity of the long bones, and premature fusion of epiphyses leading to short stature. Then other manifestation can be gallstone, leg ulcers, it's again very common, pericarditis, then diabetes. These all are transfusion related complications because of the iron deposition. Can have diabetes or cirrhosis of liver, or evidence of hypersplenism or leg ulcer or gallstones. Then for thalassemia intermedia, usually patient might present to you with moderate pallor, and they usually maintain a hemoglobin level of around 6, and as the anemia worsens with infection, and these people might tend to be less transfusion dependent, but the skeletal changes will be present, and progressive splenomegaly might be present. There might be growth retardation, but they have a pretty longer survival than the thalassemia major. Then the clinical features of the thalassemia minor, usually these patients are asymptomatic and they have a mild pallor, or usually no jaundice or no growth retardation or no splenomegaly. They might just manifest as an iron deficiency anemia, where you have hyperchromic microcytic anemia, and they're usually refractory to iron therapy, and they have a normal life expectancy. Diagnosis wise, when you have roundabout, when you see a patient with thalassemia major, it will be usually present by as early as 2 years of life. Thalassemia intermedia will be a later presentation, when the trait will almost be normal, and the clinical features will be anemia, hepatosplenomegaly, growth failure, and growth retardation. And in cases of intermedia, again you will have anemia, but usually milder, and hepatosplenomegaly and thalassemia feces will be there. And this basically you can have rough about the values of different kinds of hemoglobin, but blood picture will usually show hemoglobin reduce. It can be anywhere around 3 to 9 milligram, RBC count will be increased, WC-PT will be normal, but very important is this MCV, MCH and MCHC will be reduced. Very important RBC indices this is. And on peripheral smear you have all kind of microcytic hypochromic anemia and anisopoikilocytosis. You can have target cells or bullseye or target cells because of uh, because of the scraping of the RBC's membranes. Then you can have teardrop cells or basophilic stippling. Cytoplasmic inclusion bodies will might be present, or post patient undergoing splenectomy you can have Howell-Jolly body or Hens bodies. And what is very importantly, reticular count might be increased or it can be decreased. It might be increased on the ground of hemolysis being the main reason for the anemia, but since because of the ineffective erythropoiesis you might have decrease in the reticulocyte count. The again bilirubin levels may be increased, total bilirubin and indirect bilirubin might be increased. Serum ferritin elevated and transferrin saturation will be normal, and bone marrow study will show hyperplastic erythropoiesis. Red cell survival will be decreased, Forx level will decrease, free erythrocyte porphyrin might be normal, serum uric acid raised, and hemosideruria will be present. Iron overload assessment will be through the serum ferritin or urinary ferrous excretion or liver biopsy, and cardiomyopathy can be assessed through the myocardial MRI indexes which will be raised, and ventricular function can be assessed through echo. Radiological changes in small bone or hands, you will have squaring of these small bones with rectangular appearance, and medullary portion will be widened and cortex will be thinned, and there will be coarse trabecular pattern in the medulla. And skull, you will have special, there have been a special metaphor given for the skull widened diploid species with interrupted porosity, giving a hair on end appearance, or something like a goosebump appearance, or a crew cut appearance, which is a special kind of hairstyle, or a delayed pneumatization of the sinuses with leading to malar eminence or cheek prominence. This is what the hair on end appearance or a crew cut appearance looks like. Then major diagnosis through electrophoresis, you will find that you have HbF, fetal hemoglobin, in the range of 10 to 98%. And the HbA2 or HbA will be almost absent. In minor, you might have a normal HbA2, but in cases of normal individual, this is the basic ratio of fetal hemoglobin, HbA and HbA2. So the management of thalassemia major will be basically comprehensive management, which include confirmation of the diagnosis, then correction of anemia through repeated packed cell transfusion, and then the you have very strangely you have a dual therapy where correction of anemia, and that will leading to excess iron deposition, and there again you will need removal of excess iron, and that is choose chelation therapy. Then management of complications will be like endocrine or cardiac complication or infection. It can be transfusion related or over iron deposition, excess of iron storage, and then you can have certain drugs to increase gamma chain synthesis, or curative treatment is, stem cell transplant or bone marrow transplantation is the treatment of choice, and for future treatment, gene replacement therapy has been looked upon as a future treatment. So basically, while managing a case of thalassemia, you need a multidisciplinary approach, pediatrician, hematologist, blood transfusion specialist, endocrinologist, psychologists and social workers, all of their effort has to be collaborated. But the transfusion therapy in thalassemia is basically to prevent the anemia and to suppress endogenous erythropoiesis. And regular blood transfusion are presently the mainstay of treatment. And the transfusion protocols should be hemoglobin maintained more than 9 gram per deciliter or more than 10 gram per deciliter, and hypertransfusion is when the pre-transfusion hemoglobin is 10 and it is maintained at greater than 12 gram, and the super transfusion is when the pre-transfusion hemoglobin is greater than 12 gram and maintained at more than 14 gram. So basically current recommendation is basically we have to keep the blood hemoglobin anywhere around more than 10 gram, and it is being observed that the leukoreduced packed cell RBC transfusions are the desired type of blood for thalassemic children, and because it helps in prevention of transfusion reactions. And benefits of blood transfusion is, as we have seen, is improves tissue oxygenation, prevents chronic hypoxia, improves normal growth and development, prevents erythropoiesis or extramedullary erythropoiesis, and reduces chances of hemolytic phases or reduces splenomegaly and cardiomyopathy and GIT absorption of iron. So the when to start the transfusion, it's rather an ambiguous question where usually as soon as the diagnosis is confirmed or patients we should try to initiate the transfusion, and especially if the children are for thalassemia intermedia, we can still wait until the hemoglobin drops by less than 7 gram, and then we can start with the regular transfusion. But usually in the thalassemia major patient, we start as soon as the diagnosis is made and looking at the serum hemoglobin level. And usually the transfusion interval most in the thalassemia major patients are usually we keep it at the 4 weeks, which is the physiological requirement for the hemoglobin decline. So usually it is keeps at 4-week interval. That's every month you need a transfusion, or it can varies from individual to individual. It can be up to 6 weeks. So in a year you will need almost anywhere around 8 to 12 bottles of RBCs, and usually the volume will be 15 to 20 ml per kg. And transfusion target, usually we try to keep a pre-transfusion target 9 to 10 and a post-transfusion target around more than 12, 13.5 to 15.5. So in order to continue with the normal physical growth and avoid chronic hypoxia or compensatory marrow hyperplasia. And one of the very important feature of transfusion, or one of the very intriguing complication, is because of the iron overload which occurs in the thalassemic patients because of the multiple transfusion and lack of physiological excretion mechanism for the excess iron. And so once the serum ferritin level is more than 1000, we have to consider iron chelation therapy for such patients, especially when you have ferritin more than 1 gram, 1000 nanogram per deciliter, or patient receiving almost around 15 to 20 transfusion in year, or at any particular time, or if a hepatic iron concentrate exceeds 3.2 gram per gram dry weight, we should consider chelation therapy. And usually the chelation therapy is for 1 unit of blood supposed to be approximately equal to 250 milligram of iron. So the chelation therapy is in the form of desferrixamine, which is an iron chelating agent, and which is giving as a subcutaneous pump over a period of 12 hours in 5 to 8 days a week. And it usually starts when the ferritin level is 1000, and especially it's initiated mostly after the child is 5 years of age, and vitamin C is given on the day of chelation to enhance desferrexamine induced urinary excretion of iron. The adverse effect with desferrexamine can be cardiotoxicity, arrhythmias related to cataract, because then sensory motor hearing loss, bone dysplasia, growth retardation, rapid infusion related histamine related reactions or hypotension or infection or sepsis. And since desferrexamine is given for almost for a very long period of time, so you have to monitor through the you have to keep monitoring all these complications through respective annual eye checkups and annual ECGs and echos. And the other form of chelation therapy is oral chelator, in name as deferripiron, which is usually started with the child more than 2 years of age, and it's given in the dose of 50 to 100 milligram per kg. And again, it has an adverse effect of reversible arthropathy or agranulocytosis or lupus. So CBC should be monitored on a regular basis when starting on these drugs. There are certain other oral chelators which is still not very much commonly used. Then the other treatment of choice is splenectomy. It is usually deferred as long as possible because of very obvious reasons, as early splenectomy can lead to severe sepsis through the capsulated organisms. So it is usually tried to be deferred as long as possible, and especially for patients with massive splenomegaly causing mechanical discomfort, or in a case of hypersplenism where and patient is more prone for infections, or there is a threatening thrombocytopenia and agranulocytosis or leukopenia, then we can even consider a splenectomy in such cases. Or there is a very high progressive increasing blood transfusion requiring packed RBCs. Bone marrow transplant is the best method for cure. The only thing is not a very easy or a very practical therapeutic choice, and it is the treatment of choice. And again, other risk factors which can be with the bone marrow transplant can be hepatomegaly or portal fibrosis or iron overload or older age. They are the associated risk factor with bone marrow transplant. Newer therapies has been tried. Gene manipulation replacement have been developed, and still they are in the introductory phase. Then HB fetal hemoglobin augmentation is another choice through initiation of hydroxyurea or erythropoietin, especially in patients with thiol intermediate. These can be tried. So the prognosis is not very good. Life expectancy 15 to 25 years, and if untreated, it is as bad as less than 5 years. So the prevention is very important, especially for antenatal diagnosis. You need to make if you have an antenatal diagnosis or a couple with any baby with thalassemia major. You need to terminate the pregnancy as soon as the antenatal diagnosis is made, and we even try to keep preventing marriages between the traits. On the prenatal diagnosis can be through fetal blood or chorionic villus sampling by 10 to 12 weeks, or amniocentesis by 15 to 18 weeks, and analysis of fetal DNA or PCR to detect beta globin genes can be done. So prevention is better than cure. This Maxis suits especially this dreadful disease which is beta thalassemia. And similarly, alpha thalassemia, as we know, there's because of the absent alpha unit will be excess beta subunits, and again this will form a tetramer and will find an inclusion body, and similarly it will enhance ineffective erythropoiesis and extravascular hemolysis. And the genes are present on the chromosome 16. We have the 4 copies of alpha globulin genes, so each genes are responsible for 1/4 production of alpha globin. A loss of one gene will be silent carrier, loss of 2 genes will be thalassemia minor, loss of 3 will be hemoglobin H disease, which leads to visually something hemoglobin H is association of beta chains in group 4, or hemoglobin H, where the loss of 4 genes will lead to hemoglobin BART, where you have no alpha chains and only gamma chains present, and association of 4 gamma chains will be hemoglobin BART. And you can see the classification. As you can see, this is the basic classification. Normal is alpha 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 alpha, silent when you have 1 genes gone, and minor is when the 2 genes are gone, HBH when you have 3 of the 4 genes, and BART's hydroxyl is 4 genes. And actually as you'll see, silent carriers are usually asymptomatic. Alpha thalassemia traits, they might have mild anemia or microcytosis, but HBS disease will usually have microcytosis, hemolysis, and severe anemia, then bone deformity or chipmunk feces, splenomegaly, which can be severe and life-threatening, and even golf ball inclusions in microscopy. And usually this is more prominent in Middle East and the Mediterranean area with the moderate anemia and gallstones, and but they don't tend to be very much transfusion dependent. And HB BART is basically incompatible with life because there is a severe hypoxia. They have a very high affinity. These all are gamma 4 chains. They're replaced when you don't have the beta 4 chains. And the most severe manifestation in fetus, and there are chances of intrauterine death or stillborn because of anemia, and there will be most of the death is due to cardiac failure, and there will be edema on hepatosplenomegaly. And so it almost present a picture sometimes looking like an RH incompatibility. So diagnosis is again through the HB electrophoresis, and treatment for HB BART is immediate exchange transfusion or intrauterine exchange transfusion. And diagnosis is again almost the same as we did in beta thalassemia. And treatment is almost the same. Usually for blood transfusion or iron chelation, avoidance of oxygen drugs, folic acid supplementation, splenectomy whenever it is required, and bone marrow transplantation and the gene therapy are the treatment of choice. So that's all for today, thalassemia. I hope we have covered all the aspects of thalassemia, and it must be fruitful for you. So if you have any query, do let me know, and we'll take up another chapter for this hematology section, and that is the anemia and the classification of anemia, and especially the iron deficiency anemia in the next class. That will be more will be covered in ops and gynecology, and we'll finish off with AML and lymphoma, Hodgkin's lymphoma, and all in this hematology section. So I can't see any query. We'll call it a day. Thank you so much, class. Thank you for your attendance.